Okay, perfect. So thank you all for joining me this morning for our third version of Career Bridge, the summer series that we are conducting through the Office of Career Services and Celsius as a whole. Today's topic is going to be job search strategies. So there is a lot to cover, and so I understand if I talk too fast, just type questions in the chat. This video is being recorded, so you will have access to this after the session. You will have access to it on YouTube. And so you can always go back if you miss anything that I'm talking about this morning. So before I start, I want to talk a little bit about our office, Celsius as a whole. So if you could in the chat, I know some of you are graduating seniors, but could you go ahead and put, your interaction with our office, if you're familiar with Celsius or career services, if you're brand new to the office or have never used our services before, let me know how you've kind of interacted with Celsius in the past. Or you can unmute yourself too.
I guess I can speak a little bit. As you know, I've worked with you a couple of times and with people in Celsius in general, just for like career exploration and advice and strategies and tips, especially concerning like action points on how to get myself out there too. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Xander. And then I see some people have been their freshman year. Spencer, Alan, you haven't been to Celsius yet. Tal, you've been for general advice. Yes, of course. Awesome. So we are your one-stop shop for all things professional development, as well as experiential learning opportunities. So when I say experiential learning, I want you to think about internships, summer research, those types of things that wouldn't necessarily be academically related in terms of your classes, but other things that you have done in the past. So we operate on a career community model, meaning that we have different advisors that assist in different career industries or communities, as we call them. So as you can see on this slide, we have Lady Stacy, who oversees our arts, communication, entertainment, government, law, and international affairs. Erica, she oversees students who are interested in exploring business, sports, so sports management, financial services, and analytics and technology. Linda, she advises students who are interested in the STEM and health sciences fields. And then finally, I advise students who are interested in nonprofit, social sciences, education, anything that doesn't fall into the other four categories, as well as students who are exploring careers and majors. And so I wanted to bring this up because as you start thinking about your career search and your job search in the future, you can meet with any or all of us, right? So one of the glories about your college degree is that you can use it in any industry or any field, right? So let's just say that you are a business major, but you're interested in going into government work, right? So you could meet, of course, with Erica, but you could also meet with Lady Stacy. So I want you to keep that in mind as you are exploring your career, exploring your future, and thinking about how you might interact with our office. And I will say that if you are a graduating senior, or if you have graduated, you can still use our services. You still have access to Handshake. You can still schedule an appointment. We are available this summer via virtual appointments, as well as in the fall, we'll be available virtually as well. So keep that in mind as you continue to move forward. Okay, so let's jump into it because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So let's talk about starting your search. As I'm going through this slide, also tell me if you have conducted a job search before, if you are kind of thinking about getting started, or where you're at in your job search. So kind of help me better prepare for this presentation and to help me and make sure I'm answering your questions. So just in the chat, let me know where you're at in your job search process, or if you're just kind of looking for information because you know you're going to get started next fall. Let's talk about what it looks like to get started, right? So the very first thing that I always encourage students to think about is the urgency of their search. We know that oftentimes when people start looking for a job, it's because there's some urgency there. You're either about to graduate college or university, or you're looking to make a switch from a certain employer. But oftentimes people don't just leisurely or casually engage in a job search, right? Sometimes there is some urgency. I want you to kind of think about where you're at in your search process. And you might think, well, I'm a recent grad. I have my student loans coming due. I also have other bills to pay. And in order to do that, I need a job, right? If you have any of those thoughts, any anxious thoughts surrounding the job search, or if you've been on the search for a little while and you're not quite landing the interviews or the positions that you were hoping for, I want you to pause and I want you to take a breath. Then I want you to take another breath. And let's take one more for good measure, right? Get all of those anxious thoughts out of your mind, because when your mind is cluttered with some anxious thoughts surrounding your job search, it's hard for you to focus and be successful on your search. So first steps, take a breath, center yourself, do some meditation, do some yoga, whatever it is that you need in order to kind of center yourself and get ready to prepare for this search. Now that you've kind of released some of those thoughts around it, I want you to ask yourself, are your basic needs being met? So do you have food, shelter, water, clothing, right? Are those needs being met? And if so, how stable are those needs being met? Are you at risk of losing your housing if you don't have a job and you can't pay rent, right? Are you at risk of losing any of those things, right? In the immediate future? If you feel like you have a stable your needs are being met pretty stably, right? Then you can kind of push on the search and take a little bit longer on your search, right? Remember that your search isn't extremely urgent, and we'll talk about how you can kind of accept different positions right now in the meantime until you can find that dream job, right? Now, if your needs aren't being met, then I want you to think about what you can do right now. If it means, taking a job as an Instacart shopper, right? Or an Uber driver, or taking an administrative role somewhere, right? Or an entry-level role that isn't quite related to your eventual career goal, then I want you to consider taking that, because it's going to give you some funds in order to make sure that your needs are met. And it's also going to buy you a little bit of time while you focus on that ultimate goal, what your ultimate job and goal is, right? And I want you to remember that just because you are taking that role, it does not make you any less of a professional, or it doesn't make you any less successful. It's still giving you a lot of transferable skills that are needed, regardless of what industry you go into, what role you take, anything like that. So consider that from there. I'm going to pause here so I can look through the chat. Okay, in the middle of the job search, some people are just getting started. Awesome. Prepared resumes, but haven't actually started searching. Okay, perfect. So we're in the right place, right? Again, don't be ashamed to ask any questions in the chat. We'll have time at the end. All right, so once you've thought about and reflected on the urgency of your search, I want you to then evaluate and update your online presence. A lot of times that comes in the form of a LinkedIn profile, right? But of course, also thinking about your social media platforms. So making sure that it's in line with your personal brand. If you haven't attended, or if you weren't able to attend our personal branding career bridge, that will be up on the YouTube channel. Same with our networking career bridge that was last week. So be sure that you always go back and view that video, because a lot of these points do overlap and they are all part of your job search process. Okay, so update and optimize your LinkedIn profile. If you're a recent grad, or if you're a rising senior, a rising junior, a rising sophomore, reflect on this past year and go ahead and update your LinkedIn. If it means adding any projects, any courses, any certifications that you've received in the last year, update that, because you want to get in the habit of constantly updating it. Optimize it, right? Make sure that you have an updated about me. If you need to update your tagline or your headline on LinkedIn, LinkedIn now has one of those profile circle frames that says open to work, right? So you can put hashtag open to work on your LinkedIn profile, because now you are open to work, right? Your job search is starting. You've recently graduated. So versus when you were a junior, you could only accept internship positions. Now you're open to full-time positions. So make sure that you've updated that. I then want you to go in and update and expand your online network, right? So who do you need to add? Who do you need to remove? I know that when I first was getting started on LinkedIn, I added any and everybody. If they added me, I was like, okay, sure, why not? And that did not make a quality network for me. So I went through and I cleaned it up. And now I have quality connections that if needed, I could reach out to them. I could do an informational interview with them. So expand or diminish, right? So if you need to remove a few people, your online network, go connect with me. You can go connect with your professors, your fellow graduates, your fellow students, any previous supervisors that you've had. Make sure that you go and expand that network. And then I want you to develop a virtual networking strategy. So again, last week's past career bridge was about networking and the difference between a network and networking. So definitely check that out. But think about how you're going to use this new and improved LinkedIn account. What is the purpose, right? So create a strategy for networking and how you're going to use that to help enhance your job search from there. Then this is one of the easiest parts in your tool belt. Update your professional documents. So if you need us to review your resume, your cover letter, letter of interest, make an appointment with Career Services so we can do that. Again, we're here this summer, we're available to you, and our services are still available to you, right, as a graduate. So make sure that you update your professional documents the same way that you're updating your LinkedIn with things that you've done this past year, this past semester. That way, at least that's up to date for when you start tailoring it for the different jobs that you're applying for. And the last thing I want you to do as you're getting started is start reflecting on your past and future experiences. So if you're a recent grad or if you're a rising senior, I want you to think about what you've done over your time at Trinity that's in line with your career goals or your professional goals. What have your experiences taught you about your, what I call VIPs, your values, your interests, and your personality? What do you know now that you didn't know 3 or 4 years ago when you were entering Trinity? And how does that inform your future career goals and the future work that you want to do? I then also want you to think about that, right, in terms of the future. So what does the world of work look like to you? Excuse me. Maybe you've had an internship. Maybe you did some volunteer work and you're like, you know what, I had this really great supervisor who let me work independently, encouraged my creative ideas, let me be creative with my work. And that's what I want moving forward because that's where I thrive. Or you might say, well, I had an internship and I had a supervisor who was a micromanager who told me to do everything, was breathing down my back, would not let me work independently. And I know that that's not what I want. Right? Reflect on that. Think about what the future looks like for you. I also want you to think about what you might want from a team. What do you thrive on? Again, do you thrive working independently? Do you thrive working in a team? Does that team provide ideas for you to kind of help you move forward? Do they give you feedback, creative, critiquing, that kind of thing? What do you want from an employer? So I want you to think about that too. It's not just about the role that you play in an organization, it's the role that the organization plays in your life. If your employers, let's just say, for example, you value diversity and inclusion, and you want to work for an employer that exhibits that, whether it's through the clients that they serve or the work that they're doing, it's in their mission statement. You can see that in the employees who work there. They might have employer resource groups. So for example, if you identify as a Black or African-American employee, right, then you might say, okay, let me go ahead and join this affinity group or this employer resource group. Or if you're a first generation, or if you're Latinx or LGBTQ plus, right? If employers have that and that's something that you want because you want to be feeling like a part of a community in your organization, do the research on those employers, right? So think about what exactly you want out of an employer. And also think about what you want your day-to-day to look like. Again, start reflecting, start kind of thinking about your past experiences and how that might inform the future for you. And the best way to organize these thoughts when you're reflecting, and I use the term organize very loosely because I want you to conduct a mind map. I want you to just brain dump onto the page all of your positive and negative experiences as it relates to work or otherwise, and start trying to connect some dots there and be like, oh, you know what? I had this job as a camp counselor. I worked with school-age children. I was doing lesson planning. I really enjoyed that. How does that relate to my future work? Maybe I want to work in human resources and do training and development for new employees, right? Maybe I want to be a teacher. So do a mind map. And if you need help with mind map activities, definitely schedule an appointment with me or with our office, and I can help you kind of sort through that mind map. But again, the best way to kind of organize is to just brain dump onto a page and then try and make some sense of everything that was in your mind. Okay, so once you've gotten started, we're jumping into the search process. The first thing that I want you to do is research industry hiring trends. One thing that the pandemic has taught us is that there can be a sudden shift in industry hiring at the flip of a hat, right? So you want to kind of see what industries either slowed down hiring during the pandemic and might be picking back up, or which ones are now emerging as a result of the pandemic, right? So one of the things that we've realized is the importance of technology, right? So the industry that's kind of growing right now is tech and software and all that good stuff, right? Also healthcare. Obviously, healthcare administration, hospital workers, all that great stuff. That is a growing field. One that might have gotten hit by the pandemic is hospitality, right? Nobody could go anywhere. So that industry, restaurants, right? That all took a really huge hit from the pandemic, but it's changing as things are opening up again, things are growing. So research industry trends, excuse me. The best place to go for that is the Occupational Outlook Handbook, as well as following different thought leaders. You can look and see, you know, hot jobs, hot trends, hot industries that are kind of growing through different searches. But depending on what industry you're hoping to go into, I want you to be open to the ones that are kind of growing, right? So let's just say, for example, that you are a marketing major. So you have a business degree, but you look in the healthcare fields or in the technology fields, right? You could work in both of those. Both of those fields need marketing people. Same with the humanities degree. Your degree is extremely valuable in the fact that you have a lot of transferable skills that transcend the industry. So don't pigeonhole yourself for one specific industry. Be open to other industries as you're continuing your search. I then want you to focus on companies and not position titles. So let's use the marketing example again, right? And let's just say that you're looking for entry-level marketing positions and you're finding that there are a lot of positions that are called marketing coordinators. So that's an entry-level position. Not every company calls a marketing coordinator a marketing coordinator. So I do not want you to get too focused on doing a Google search or a LinkedIn search or an Indeed search or handshake search for marketing coordinator. I want you to look at companies in the geographical location in which you hope to be and go from there. So you might say, I've noticed that tech is a growing industry. Let me just do a quick search for top 10 tech companies to work for in San Antonio, Texas. Then you have the list of 10. I want you to then go to their website, and see exactly if the mission and their vision and the work that they're doing is in line with your own VIPs, and then go from there. Then find positions within marketing, right? Then find positions that you'd be interested in doing. Again, try not to pigeonhole yourself, try not to get too specific, and then you end up siloed and you are now coming up with a lot of the same positions over and over again. I want you to also clarify and set SMART goals. So SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals, right? I want you to think about so my favorite saying is, how do you eat an elephant? You eat them piece by piece, right? So break your job search. The elephant is the job search. It is so big and so daunting, right? How are you going to tackle it? You're going to tackle it piece by piece. So as you're continuing your search, I want you to prioritize what's important. So is updating your professional documents important because you haven't done it since freshman year and now you're a senior? Is identifying companies that you want to work for a priority for you, right? So prioritize. Then I want you to set smaller goals within those priorities. So let's say, for example, one of your larger goals within your search is that you want to get better at networking and expand your network. That's a pretty big goal and it's not very specific, so it doesn't fall under the SMART goal category. So ask yourself, what is a goal that I can meet that's realistic and achievable in terms of expanding my network? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a goal that says I want to connect with 50 Trinity alumni by the end of July on LinkedIn. Okay, that's a number. It's measurable, right? Then I want you to reflect. Is 50 reasonable? Because if you say I want to connect with quality people, that will help me in my search. What you have to remember from our LinkedIn, or excuse me, from our networking presentation, that it's not just adding connect. You want to reach out to them and talk to them and chat with them. Do you have time to talk to 50 people? If not, then you might say, okay, let me knock it down to 25. And what I'm going to do is try and connect with 5 people over the next 5 weeks, time bound, right? So remember, do that with all of your smaller goals throughout your search process. You might even flip that and say, okay, I want to submit 30 applications by the end of the summer. That takes some time too. So break that down as well, right? So set goals for yourself. That way you don't lose track of what your eventual goals are, right? And you don't get overwhelmed with the search process. I also want you to become familiar with automated recruiting. As we've seen as a result from the pandemic, we already headed that way anyways, but there's going to be a lot of AI involved in the application and the search process. You will probably be doing some virtual interviews. You will also be doing interviews through a virtual interviewing platform. So I want you to become familiar with it. I want you to do research on how to kind of for lack of a better word, how to best the applicant tracking system. So oftentimes when you're applying for companies, they use what's called ATS, their applicant tracking system. And essentially you put your resume into the application, the AI then reads the resume and scans for keywords, and then it puts you in the yes pile or the no pile. Then after that, you might talk to a human, right? But I want you to think about, well, how can I tailor my resume to use the right keywords so I can get past the ATS, right? From there, you might be taken to a virtual interviewing platform that you just record an interview. So you don't even talk to a person, right? They ask you questions. It's a robot asking you questions and you answer it. And then, you get to your second interview, and that's with the team. There's also a lot of assessments that people are putting in that they're asking people to complete before they actually get an interview with a person. So become familiar with the recruiting software that's being used. And I want you to find different techniques and how you can kind of get past that software. We have a virtual interviewing platform called Big Interview. It's accessible through Handshake. And so I want you to do a couple of practice interviews on there. You can send those interviews to career services. You can send them to a mentor, to a faculty supervisor. You can send them to anybody to review, to give you feedback on how you're answering the questions, how your background looks, how your facial features are looking, all that good stuff. I also don't want you to lose sight of the human touch, because that feels extremely disconnected if you're just working with AI and technology and you don't have a human that you're actually interviewing or interacting with until later on in the process. So send follow-up emails. This goes in line with being proactive. Once you have an interview, send a thank you email that's genuine, right? Send messages on LinkedIn to the recruiters, right? This is your search, and I want you to take ownership of that search by adding that human touch and being proactive. Now, when I say be proactive, I want you to think about the process as a whole. So a lot of people, what they do is they just go on a job board. It says, especially on Handshake, it's so easy. You just submit, you do a quick apply, submit your application, move on to the next application. That is, and I'm going to show you a graph here in a little bit, but that is not all of the application process. I want you to be proactive about finding people who work for that company that you're applying for. If they worked in that role, even better. Do an informational interview with them. If it's been a couple of weeks since you've heard any feedback or anything about your application, find a recruiter, find someone who works in HR, ask about the status of the application, or ask about the status of the position. If it's been filled, is it still open? When they hope to do the hiring? It's okay to ask those questions. So definitely be proactive in sending those emails and connecting with people from there. So the graph that I was telling you about, this is kind of what this job search workflow should look like. As you can tell, some of these different features are more time consuming, and these are what play a bigger role in your job search. So yes, writing your resume, uploading the resume, updating cover letters, they can be time consuming, but they're not nearly as time consuming as networking or getting referrals, right? So think about that as you start planning your search. Preparing for interviews, okay, it's a little bit bigger than writing your resumes, right? But still, you can do that over time. Creating a job search strategy, the second most time consuming part. And I actually have a spreadsheet that I'm going to share with everybody that's here today that'll help you organize your search a little bit better. But think about those goals. Think about your presence online. All of that takes time and reflection. And finally, networking. That is the biggest piece of your search, especially right now in a post-pandemic world, or as we're moving towards a post-pandemic world. Networking is huge. And I will say one of the glories of being stuck at home and behind a computer screen, it's a little bit easier to get online and look for people and do a quick Zoom call. You don't have to necessarily go out with them for coffee. If you want to, you can do that. However, you can just hop online and connect with people and message with them back and forth, because we're here at our computers most of the time anyways. So I want you to think about this as you're kind of thinking about your overall search and how much time you are devoting to that search. That can be another goal too, right? How many hours a week are you devoting to your search? Okay, so a few tips for success. Define your workspace. If you feel like, it can be very daunting to just sit at your desk at home and applying for jobs day in and day out, like applying for jobs as your new full-time job, go somewhere where you can go and kind of change of scenery a little bit, right? Change your scenery a little bit. If it's working outside on your patio or your porch, if it's working outside at Starbucks, if it's meeting up with a friend who's in a similar position and just kind of talking and bonding over this experience, you guys might go to the library, you might go to Starbucks a couple of times a week, and that is your dedicated workspace for applying for jobs, right? It helps you get into the mindset and kind of get away again from some of those anxious thoughts that you might have surrounding your search. I also want you to embrace upskilling, especially for my recent grads. So now that you are no longer in school, you kind of have that hard stop in your education. But as you know, as Trinity grads and as Trinity students, we are lifelong learners, right? And so you should always be interested in upskilling and learning more. There are a lot of free online resources. There are also paid ones if you feel like you want to pay. But if there's a certain certification or a certain skill that you have to learn, or you feel would make you a more competitive candidate, be open to it. Look on, the website is mooc.com or .org. It's just massive open online course. Google that and you will find it. Coursera, Skillshare, Harvard even did a few free courses that students could learn. Same with LinkedIn Learning, right? You can do all of these free badges, get all these free certifications, or paid if that's the route you want to go. But be open to it and embrace it, because then you can say, well, you know what? I'm not really working right now. However, my focus is my job search. And so part of that is becoming a more competitive applicant. Why can't I go follow thought leaders? Why can't I go to a conference that's free for students? Or why can't I read a book by a thought leader in my field, so that when I go into an interview, I can then know about all of these things and talk more about it, and you don't get too rusty. I then want you to set milestones and reward yourself. I mean, I always like working towards a reward, right? If I do really good on something. So for example, I kind of struggle with saving money. So what I do is I do these challenges and I'm not going to spend money this week, or I'm not going to spend money this month, and I'm going to try and save X amount of dollars. And if I meet that goal, I'm going to go buy myself a coffee, because I didn't buy myself a coffee all month, right? Reward yourself. It feels good. It makes the work a little bit more enjoyable. Even if it's small milestones, like you might say, I want to connect with I want to be able to connect with 5 Trinity alumni this week, and I want to have a conversation with 2 of them. If you meet that, then you can say, and when I do that, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go to the park, I'm going to meet up with some friends for a picnic, whatever that looks like, whatever brings you joy, reward yourself in that way. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help. Rely on career services. No part of your search should be done alone. You don't have to do it alone. If you have questions, email us, email me, set an appointment, right? The questions are not silly. Sometimes no question is too silly, but sometimes we give you ideas and strategies that you might not have thought about. And you might say, well, I've been on my search for a while and nothing's happening. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's look at your search and kind of see what's happening there, and go from there. And then finally, I want you to connect with us, right? Follow us on Instagram, our Twitter, Facebook, all of those fun sites. Our handle is @TrinityCelsius. We post hot jobs. We post different employer features. So just connect with us, either through Handshake or social media.